So the last aspect we're going to consider in the emotional mastery playbook is burnout, which is an accumulation of things like stress, anxiety, and negative emotions that can occur without the aforementioned areas such as assertiveness and boundaries, communication, and so on. So burnout really is an idea of how we can find ourselves as coaches, or we can see our clients losing this sense of sustainable rhythm of work. When we're focused towards achieving something, it can be and have very high levels of desire, motivation, and we want to achieve those things. And it can be health, fitness, it can be career, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's more the concept of reaching for it and driving for it. Now, being able to ride the rapids accordingly and then keep a nice smooth paddle through the more calmer waters is really important. If you find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to go hell for leather through the calmness and through the rapids and all together through the whole journey, then there is that chance of burnout. And when we think about burnout, it's not necessarily an explosion, but it can be seen as a slow fade, especially if it's an accumulation over a period of time of lots of, stress or anxiety or, boundaries being dissolved by other people, poor communication, lack of confidence then starts to come in. And actually, there's a whole myriad of things that will slowly contribute to the idea of burnout. And the biggest thing is when we lose, or our clients lose a sense of purpose, and then the pace can start to reduce, and then we start to find ourselves in like a stagnation or a sluggish kind of place. It's important when we're working with clients and even coaches, when we think about ourselves, that it's not going to arrive overnight. Just like we might find our health doesn't decrease overnight, it's a continuous uh, input that happens over a period of time, and then we find ourselves in that burnout situation. But what is the anatomy of depletion, which ultimately leads to things such as burnout? Well, Majlak and later in 2016, burnout is a triad resulting from chronic workplace stress, such as emotional exhaustion, cynicism, which is obviously the opposite of optimism, and then this reduced professional efficacy, i.e., I don't think I can do the job I need to. Now, obviously, we see that in a professional setting, but that can also be in a personal setting. It can also be in a health, fitness, and well-being setting. And then Freudenberger in 1974, long way back, this one, but still pioneering research, the root cause of erosion of motivation and commitment under relentless demand. So when we have this non-stop layering on of expectations and demands and needs, then at some point the level of motivation and commitment can start to reduce and be eroded. So these are things that we have to consider when we're working with our clients. If we're working on ourselves as coaches, also things we need to consider. And if we think about it from a disconnect perspective, so purpose and intention, if that starts to move away from the pace or output that we're actually achieving and the gap starts to increase, we start to see this slow fade. And as the slow fade increases, that's when the window of opportunity for burnout starts to come into play. And you can be working at a fast pace with purpose, and you can be working with intention and getting the right kind of output. That gap is minimal, if at all. It doesn't exist, in which case you can have that purpose linked with the pace, intention linked with the output, and we can stay connected to the journey, and therefore burnout is much less likely to occur. The idea of drains and radiators, I've worked on this with people before. I mean, think about actually what is draining our energy. And we've mentioned it in previous aspects in the playbook. I mean, think about what's restoring energy, what's bringing that potency to our existence. And this is a really good task to do if you wanted to just kind of like look at what's actually draining some of the tasks that might be going on and what's actually restoring or bringing energy and what things might be going on. If those two lists are heavily balanced towards the draining side and then not enough restoration or energy bringing activities and tasks, that is an early sign of something that would probably need to be addressed. And you might be able to go through a period of time of having slightly more energy draining aspects, as long as there's a time period where that'll end, and then the energy restoring aspects will come back in full flow and be more favored. Patterns are really important when we think about how we can see ourselves as coaches or our clients addressing what's going on within their world. So looking at the auditing perspective, so how and what can you do when it comes to modifying what you're taking on and how you're existing. The Eisenhower box is a great way of doing that. That's something that you know what you can get rid of, what you can delegate, what you can wait till later to do, and what you need to do immediately. That's often a very useful way, and you can see what patterns you have where there might be lack of delegation, or there might be people working on things that could be put later down the week, for example. And when you think about how people often have a desire to fix things, coaches, we do, but also clients might have that as well, where continuously trying to fix everything or address everything or appease everything will ultimately lead to a poor rhythm and depletion of energy. So as always, we have a focus task which we can look at. So just to bring this in now, like where would you see depletion most happening for yourself as a coach or for your clients if you're taking this to them, identifying where that begins and where that exists. Now, it could be things like workload, it could be people pleasing, it could be emotional labor. All of those are valid ways in which you can see depletion overall. So having an idea around that and identifying clearly will then allow for better exploration. So what belief keeps pushing towards the overextension and not being within capacity? Is it a belief that rest must be earned, for example, or fear of stopping equals failing? Both things that carry a burden when we think about how that moves us towards burnout, and how our clients might see, obviously if I stop training, if I stop this or I stop that, then I'm going to be seen as a failure. And these are very important things that we need to be able to communicate with our clients as coaches. The shift part of the focus task would be see where you align yourself in a deliberate act of restoration, and that could be saying no to a specific request. That would be linked very nicely with assertiveness and boundaries. Scheduling a specific block of rest, that links very nicely to motivation and being able to know when to take your foot off and then lean back in. And then staying hard on that end of day ritual, so being able to decompress, to rest, to restore, all of these very important things that will minimize the amount of chance of burnout creeping in. So just to wrap up, when we think about normalization of rest, it can be seen as a responsibility. That person should have a responsibility to rest and recuperate as an act of self-care. Whether that happens or not is part of our job as coaches, and even if we're busy coaches ourselves, to bring that into play. And when we as coaches can sustain ourselves and we can model that in a very present and apparent way, our clients can start to understand a little bit more and appreciate that, how to protect their time, their energy, and avoid that burnout. So that's the final one for the playbook. And if you have any questions, want to reach out, please feel free. It's there for you to do within the community, and you can go through it again at whatever frequency you want. Hope it's been useful, and speak to you soon. Thank you.